Is this thing on? Welcome back to Big Mouth and fancy seeing you here in June. A very welcome, my friends, and especially my enemies. Come in, sit down, no touching. I don't do the touching. And welcome, I think, to my very first Star Wars show. Have I done a Star Wars show before? That Swiss cheese brain of mine can't remember. So welcome to the Star Wars show. Don't forget we can keep the Star Wars conversation going if you follow me on Twitter at MoviesTVMad. Write it down, don't forget it. So first of all, I'm going to read you an excerpt from a Variety article. And I don't know who wrote this, but this is very interesting. Now, I noticed that Jeremy from Geeks and Gamers shared this, and I'm always very interested in what Jeremy's got to say. As long as he's not talking about Trump, I'm not interested in that. But I'm interested in what he's got to say about the culture war and what's going on with films and TV these days. So here it is. It's become almost comical. On Monday, Game of Thrones showrunners David Benioff and D.B. Weiss became the latest high-profile talents to part ways with the Star Wars universe before their movies hit theatres. They're part of a revolving door of A-list directors who have found it impossible to realise their visions in a corporate culture that is said to invite little creative independence and argument. They join the ranks of Josh Trank, Colin Trevorrow, Phil Lord and Chris Miller in being summarily dismissed from the Star Wars productions. They were intended to helm in films of the size and scale of Star Wars. It's not unheard of for productions to run into heated creative disagreements, but the high rate of turnover is raising eyebrows across Hollywood and among the rabid base of fans. It is also inspiring questions about the management style of Kathleen Kennedy, the executive tasked with guiding Lucasfilm with finding fresh ways to expand the galaxy far, far away. I don't think Kathleen Kennedy is going to be a problem for very much longer. I have it under great authority, big authority, that Kevin Feige will become the head of Lucasfilm. Expect that maybe to be announced a few weeks before the release of The Rise of Skywalker. What does that do? It brings confidence back into the franchise. Kevin's done a great job with the MCU. You know, I have criticisms of the MCU and how it's built itself up and titled itself as the greatest thing ever, which is not. But the man has got connectivity. He's clever. People will go and watch any MCU movie. And when you can do that, when you can get people to watch mediocrity, you know, that's amazing. So Kevin Feige is needed at Star Wars. He wouldn't be the man or the woman that I choose to run this franchise. I think we need a Star Wars fan who's also talented, male or female, from any culture, from any background. I don't care. But that's not the case. And so I think Kevin Feige will take over Lucasfilm. Star Wars is an absolute mess. I will say what's going on Disney Plus with Star Wars looks brilliant. The projects they're developing on there, and we spoke about that yesterday, didn't we? And I don't want to repeat myself. At this moment in time, I think the future of Star Wars is on Disney Plus because they're the ones who are going to have the Star Wars content. They're not going to be in cinemas for now, and let's see what happens there and how Kevin Feige can fix this. Now, Disney Star Wars started in very different terms than it's on now. After The Force Awakens and after Rogue One, two films that made over $1 billion each, fans loved those films. I know some fans have criticism saying it's a rip-off of A New Hope, but we know why they did that. Understandably, after the kind of bitterness some fans had towards George Lucas for the prequels. I'm a prequel defender, by the way. I loved them. I think George gave us 6 awesome movies. A New Hope is my favourite film. But because of that kind of bitterness towards George and the prequels, I think what they thought, let's just tread softly. That's why they didn't adapt his 3 movies, because they thought that's not what the fans wanted. And if you go back to the build-up to The Force Awakens, I heard so many people saying, we don't want Lucas involved. Now, the same people are looking at George with rose-coloured glasses. I love George. George is the birther, the father of Star Wars. I believe his 7, 8 and 9 should have been adapted by J.J. Abrams or whoever. But it didn't happen because a lot of us were unhappy with George. So I don't blame Disney for what happened there. I don't. It was the wrong decision. but it's all very well looking at things after the fact. So basically, I loved The Force Awakens. The fans did. They came in their droves. We were excited. A film a year was announced. For any Star Wars fan, that was brilliant. And they started doing these Star Wars stories. Rogue One was very successful. I thought it was a really good film, and I enjoyed it. And then The Last Jedi happened. So how did it become so divisive? Well, first of all, we have to put this at the door, at the very person, and that's Mark Hamill. Mark Hamill put the negative idea in our heads even before we saw a stroke, a minute, a second of The Last Jedi. He was saying that he didn't believe Luke would act the way that Ryan was getting him to act, but that Ryan was writing him to act. So that's very interesting as well. So for me, he was the one who planted the seed, the negative, hateful seed in our heads. Now, you all know what I think of The Last Jedi. It's a very boring, dull, uninspiring Star Wars movie as far as I'm concerned. As a sci-fi movie, it's okay, but as a Star Wars movie, it's dull, it's boring, and it's uninspiring. But the vicious reaction to the film was all to do with Mark Hamill. Hamill put that seed in our heads that he didn't agree with some of the things that Ryan was doing. And I was stunned that someone who was making a film with Lucasfilm, with Disney, was allowed to come out and say this stuff. Ultimately, Mark was right. And Mark was obviously free to say this stuff. They repaid him by killing off his character, or on the surface, that's what it looks like. More on that in a moment. But he was the one who sowed the negative seeds. And with those negative seeds in our heads, we reacted. Now, a lot of people don't like the identity politics in The Last Jedi. I don't really care. I know what they did to Poe Dameron, that was ridiculous, and that was awful, and that was cringy. I get that. But ultimately, for me, I just wasn't excited by The Last Jedi. Reasons? Because I liked Snoke, and I didn't want him killed off. Maybe he's not dead. We don't know. There's another chapter to go. And when Snoke dies, there's nothing left on the table. There's nothing. I've got my salt and vinegar ketchup brown sauce, but I've got nothing to put it on. Do you understand? And that's my issue with The Last Jedi. So people kind of attack J.J. Abrams for bringing back Palpatine. But can you blame him? What else can he do? There's nothing there. There's nothing there. It's like Johnson solved everything in The Last Jedi. So there's nothing there. There's to continue. This should be the epic final chapter. I don't agree. I mean, I understand why they're saying this is the conclusion of the Skywalker saga, but that saga was completed with Return of the Jedi. Now, if they adapted George's 7, 8, and 9, then we would have had a climactic episode 9, wouldn't we? There wouldn't be an issue, but there's nothing. There's really very little to resolve. Of course, there is, because we still don't know how Rey's so perfect. We don't know a few things, but we were told in The Last Jedi that Rey wasn't special. Her parents were the crap parents who just dumped her. We know that's not true. We know that Kylo was lying. We know that. That's obvious. But there are a lot of issues. So basically, he gave us a lot of twists, Rian Johnson, but they were underwhelming twists. We're not talking about 7 here, where, Kevin Spacey has got Gwyneth Paltrow's head in a box, and that's the biggest twist in a movie I've ever seen. That's a great twist. It's devastating, it's horrifying, but it's a great twist for the movie viewer and the consumer. What Ryan did with The Last Jedi was take things away from us rather than give us something exciting, something to chew on till the next film. Now, J.J. Abrams did quite the opposite. He sewed in a lot of arcs, and it was very exciting. And he would have brought those arcs over. But again, that's JJ's fault as well for not writing and directing The Last Jedi as well as the final film. But originally, Colin Trevorrow was going to do that. So, as I've said before, I never really understood how this was going to work with 3 different writer-directors. They were all going to do their own thing. Now, Lucasfilm and Kathleen Kennedy are accused of bringing in directors who must sing to their tune. But it's quite obvious to me that Rian Johnson wasn't singing to anyone's tune. He was singing to his own. The truth of the matter is, Rian Johnson did his movie. Now, there's loads of variables and parables and things you can compare to the Return of The Last Jedi. Sorry, getting confused with my Star Wars films, The Last Jedi, and Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. Snyder was allowed to make his film, then we got Justice League, right? Johnson was allowed to make his film, then they got scared. So when Trevorrow wanted to make his own film, they wouldn't allow it. They were scared. They wanted to contain. There was an explosion of negativity and toxicity. Star Wars had never seen this before. Yeah, people were angry about the prequels. Some, not me, by the way, and not many of us, but some were triggered by it and angry, but nothing like this. Nothing to actually affect the future of the franchise. Nothing that affects box office and merchandise sales. People were still going out buying Darth Maul's double lightsaber because George gave us some amazing concepts in the prequels. The pod racing, the double lightsaber, Darth Maul. You know, the story behind how the stormtroopers were created. That was all awesome. But what's happened now is, it seems to me, nobody seems to know what to do. So you've got this situation now, and you've got poor J.J. Abrams. I mean, part of this is his own fault for not staying for all three films. But I've said this before of J.J. Too many fingers, too many pies, doesn't know what to do next, doesn't know where to focus on. That's the problem. He's become a corporate and a director. That is a bad mix. That is a bad mix. You can't balance everything. So I'm happy that he's involved with Warner Brothers now exclusively, so he can pick his project and he can be more of a writer-director than a corporate body. He still has to be. He's still the head of Bad Robot. But I think at heart he's a writer-director, and when he focuses on that, like he did on Star Trek 2009, he does a super job. This guy is ultra-talented. People call him a rip-off merchant, blah, blah, blah. I don't care. He's very talented. Lost was awesome, and so was Alias. And was it Felicity? He did a show called Felicity, which I really enjoyed as well. The man is a genius. He just needs to get back to what he does best. And there's nobody better who can fix this mess, because Star Wars, nobody knows how much The Rise of Skywalker is going to make. People can make claims. People can look at tracking. And, you know, pre-release sales are not a good barometer. So we know that there's controversy about this kind of first hour of sales, and the Ticketmaster saying this is partly owned by Disney, apparently, and I can only allege that. I don't know. I don't want to be shut down. I enjoy doing videos and bringing them to you. So we really don't know. We really don't know what this film's going to make. It could be a total disaster. They could make mediocre money. This film needs to make at least $1 billion. There's no question about that. That's the only way they can spin a successful movie here. So what's JJ going to do? Well, we've already touched on the criticism of bringing Palpatine back. The man had no choice. Is Palpatine Snoke, or was Snoke working for Palpatine? That's something we're going to find out. Listen, Palpatine's a great character, and I know we saw him fall down the shaft. I know he should be dead, but we also know that he explained to Anakin that he found a way to bring people back from the dead. We know that. George already put that in the canon. So he might not be able to die, or it might take a lot, like 2 people to kill him, like Kylo and Rey. So, and there's been rumours about time travel as well, hasn't there? So how do you time travel in Star Wars? There's never been anything, a time ship or anything. The only way, I think, is by the help of maybe Yoda. I think Yoda's definitely going to figure in this one. I was pleased to see him in The Last Jedi. That was a pleasant surprise, one of the few things I did enjoy. But the thing is here, if the time travel thing is true, that means that J.J. Abrams is trying to rewrite what Rian Johnson did in The Last Jedi. Now, J.J., of course, is denying this. But of course he will. And he's not exactly saying he's never said he won't undo what he did. He's never said that. And if the time travel thing is true, then obviously they're going to rewrite certain moments. I think this is a film where JJ will try and fix some of his mistakes in The Force Awakens, like not having Han, Luke and Leia together in a scene, back together. I think that's going to happen. I think they will have to use some element of CG, even though Disney said they won't CGI Carrie Fisher in The Rise of Skywalker. They obviously have scenes that they didn't use for both The Last Jedi and The Force Awakens. But I think we are going to see Han, Luke, and Leia together. No question about that. He's going to want to fix his mistakes. He's going to finish off this movie and say, you see, both what Ryan did leaked into this, and it works, and what I started works as well. This can fix the whole problem. I just want to talk about Solo. I quite like Solo. I don't think Solo's a bad movie. The problem is nobody asked for it. Everybody sees, bloody hell, what's going on there? I'm sober, I promise. But, nobody asked for another actor to play Han Solo. It's a film we didn't need. But actually, if you watch the film, it's awesome. And there's a post-credit scene of Darth Maul. How awesome is that? What a shame we didn't see more of that, and maybe we will. Maybe a Darth Maul show's coming. There's so many things they can do via Disney+. Look, I love Star Wars. I love the first 6 movies. I think The Force Awakens is okay. As I say, The Last Jedi bored the hell out of me. Rogue One was a very good film as well. And I thought that Solo was an okay film. And I think it deserved to make a little bit more money than it did, but it was a victim. Solo was an innocent victim of what happened with The Last Jedi, but also they sacked Lord and Miller, and I was very excited about what Lord and Miller were doing. Some people were telling me what Lord and Miller were doing. You were going to get a very funny, action-packed film, and you were really going to fall in love with this version of Han. But Kennedy was scared. Just like Kevin Tsujihara was scared and what the decisions he made with Justice League, like sacking Zack Snyder. This is what was happening here. But it wasn't as much of obviously Justice League is a flop, but Justice League made its money back. Whatever they spent on Justice League, they got back. They just didn't make a profit. Obviously, with 450 globally, there was no chance of Lucasfilm getting their money back. And don't forget, Ron Howard reshot that whole film with the Justice League theatrical cut, or the Justice League. Joss went back and he shot a few scenes and rewrote a few things. But basically, they didn't spend as much money on trying to fix that film, and they made it worse, of course. It's a Frankenstein's monster. So with fear comes more mistakes. Because of what happened with The Last Jedi, which should never have happened in the first place. JJ should have at least wrote that film. It was his vision. He started it off. It didn't make any sense. So you get a mess of astronomical proportions. So I'll go back to The Rise of Skywalker. I believe this film's going to be good. I don't think it's going to tank. I don't think it's going to stink. Look, there's some people with an agenda towards Lucasfilm right now, and they don't want to say good things about what's going on. I think JJ is going to fix this for people. I think he's going to finish off this saga. As I say, I think Return of the Jedi did that already. And I would have loved it if 7, 8 and 9, Lucas's 7, 8 and 9 was implemented in this. But it wasn't. Mistakes have been made by Kathleen Kennedy, Alan Nahon, and the other guy, I forget his name. Basically, this is not the MCU because they don't run the MCU. Kevin Feige does. So all of a sudden, Kevin Feige's going to be involved with Star Wars. They don't know what else to do. And I think this is probably why one of the reasons and Dan and Dave are withdrawn. I don't know. I've got so many theories, so many conspiracy theories, and it doesn't really matter anymore. So I think Kevin Feige will either be announced as a story consultant for Star Wars, or he will be announced as president, maybe joint president of Lucasfilm, along with Kathleen Kennedy. Maybe it will be put publicly, but he's there to give his assistance to Kathleen. Or Kathleen Kennedy will be moved in another role, created a bullshit role, so they and her don't lose face. But don't lose faith in The Rise of Skywalker, because I think it is going to be a good film. It's going to be a good bookend. J.J. Abrams doesn't want his name on a mess. And ultimately, The Force Awakens was good. The Force Awakens was okay. We can go back and be more negative about it, but I think that film worked. It really did. And I think if he didn't make the mistake of not being involved with the middle movie, we wouldn't be here now. This negativity wouldn't be here, but it is. And it has to be fixed so they can go on. Because right now, there's no cinematic movies being planned. So I do believe Kevin Feige is now running the show. I think major announcements will be made before the release of the movie just to put confidence in that film and the rest of the franchise. So it'll be very interesting. You'll find out first here on Big Mouth any breaking news about Star Wars, DC, movies, TV. I do reviews sometimes as well. And I'll be back maybe later today, but tomorrow. So I hope you enjoyed the Star Wars show. Follow me on Twitter at MoviesTVMad. Please like, share and subscribe the video. And if you're a Star Wars fan and you haven't subscribed yet, make sure you do. Because we are kindred spirits, brothers and sisters. Join the family. See you later.